China's real estate is a $62 trillion monster, and Evergrande started to break down, and during its collapse, it was exposed how bad it really was. I've got something that's even bigger. Believe it or not, what we're experiencing right now is bigger than what we had with Evergrande. They had to halt Evergrande stock. They had to put it away, keep it under the rug so that you wouldn't find out what was happening behind the scenes. And now we got something bigger. I'm going to show you all of that today. I've got the notes that you need to see. I'm going to show you the data and the details so that you are informed. And then at the end, we're going to learn what we've got to do to not only during these times thrive and prosper. Okay, during this situation, it isn't a time to hide and go, become a victim. We don't want that. We want to be educated, we want to be informed. I'm going to bring you those details today. The first thing that we need to look at is the local government debt. This is extremely important. Everything in China works on the local levels. Okay, some of that's managed from the very top, but when we're talking about all the different calculations and the way that they disperse things, this comes on the local level. They do this because you got 1.4 billion people. You can't exactly manage and micromanage. So you do this from a local level. But that local government has an issue. And we're going to break that down today. We're going to talk about de-dollarization and what's been happening there. I also need to highlight the geopolitical aspects and what about the tit for tat coming in with the USA, big issues. The first thing I want to look at is what's going on with the economy. A lot, right? You've seen it before where you have China's July exports and imports contract faster than expected. So this was originally brought to my attention by one of the subscribers, and I wanted to show this to you. You got shipments falling 14.5%, imports down 12.4% as demand shrinks at home and abroad. Usually you call that a recession, but today we don't have that term anymore, apparently. So this is what we've got. We got definitely waning demand, and the economy seems to be slowing down, right? That's one thing. What about this? Biblical flooding in Beijing after heaviest rain in 140 years. 800,000 people forced to relocate in and around Beijing. Okay, so there are problems that are going on from natural disasters. They've got the issues with the economy in general. That's it. I wanted to show you this now, because I'm trying to highlight the fact that this has been going on for a while. There are so many other things, not just like one thing. Oh, Evergrande is a problem. No, you've got a lot of things. And so here we are. We're going to talk about this debt circumstance. China's hidden debt problem laid bare in a city that's half finished roads. It's empty flats. You can look at it for yourself, just like the others of Ordos and all these other cities that have been around. You've seen the pictures and the videos, I'm sure. But basically, it's the same scenario where they built all these empty cities. Nobody's living in them. And they were hoping anyway, that people will move out of the rural areas into these cities eventually. They just built way too much. And then we got into the circumstance of 2020. And now you don't have enough people moving in. And this is an issue. You don't have the development there. A lot of those developments have stopped. They started to knock down all these buildings, or some of the buildings. There's a big problem going on with not just Evergrande. I'm going to show you another company that I had brought up during that time frame that is in some serious circumstance. Why? Because that company has defaulted multiple times. Multiple times. They are not paying back those they owe money to. Do you think that's a concern? I certainly do. I want to know from you right now in the comment section what you expect to happen with China's real estate. Is it actually going to collapse? You know specifically that the government cannot bail out trillions and trillions of dollars worth. It's not possible. So how are they going to fix it? Well, we'll talk about that here momentarily. The most worrisome thing that's going on in real estate right now, according to Goldman Sachs, is surging local government debt levels that the leader of China, the henchmen have done their best to hide. The default troubles at the globe's most indebted property development seem like small embers compared to the $8.2 trillion worth of local government financing vehicles outstanding. And that's just the LGFVs that we know of. This is coming from Forbes. We're not getting this from some random website or off the top of my head. I'm bringing you the details from as many different, I'm giving you all the sources. And then, of course, I want you to be able to understand these things and these concepts. This is the main focus for this video. You need to understand, we're talking about $8.2 trillion. $8.2 trillion, as well as the defaults that have come on top of this. You know that there is a big concern. Let's look further in. As you can see, the data provided here, Goldman has it. Clearly, the tally is higher now. This was back in 2020. 10 months ago, these shadowy investment schemes had reached 53 trillion yuan, up from 16 trillion. That is $2.47 trillion in 2013. So you could see that it's really multiplying over the last decade. The amount to roughly 52% of China's gross domestic product. So 52% of China's economy is this size. I mean, just try to think, how could they possibly bail that out? How? Well, they'll just bail it out. I mean, you got to think for a second. Like, put your one foot, when you're walking, you're putting one foot in front of the other, or else you're going to fall flat on your face. But when there are people are out there and they just say things, well, then, you know, you're making yourself a fool if you don't realize that this right here can't just be bailed out. Okay, like a traditional bailout, hey, we'll help the lenders here, we'll help them there. That's why China has yet to resolve this crisis. There is no resolution yet. We know that, and that is an absolute fact here at this time. In other words, as scary as the $300 billion Evergrande story might be, the government has made much bigger problems. They've got much bigger problems on their hands. The most acute, keeping GDP this year from falling too far below the 6% that Beijing hoped to produce without adding to the nation's bubble troubles. I don't understand how they're going to do that. Good luck to them on that. But that's where we are at. The forces behind local government sitting on financing vehicle debt worth twice the size of Germany's GDP date back to 2008, even before Lehman Brothers. They encouraged municipal borrowing binges. The way local officials got attention in Beijing rose to national prominence was producing above average GDP rates. So how does it work? You got all these local levels, right? Oh, you got to produce in your local area. Okay, no worries, boss. We're going to build up. Oh, we don't have enough money? No. Come on, let's figure something out. Let's get the money coming in. Don't worry. And then 2020 hits. 2020, everything stops. You can't do anything. There's no money coming in and you're not allowed to produce. Oh, we got a problem now. And so that's where we're at, because they were being told, you got to get your economy to go on fire. Local government, but they literally couldn't. 2020 stopped everything for them. This has been devastating, no question. You've got $8 trillion worth of this stuff that is essentially under fire right here and now. So that's what we're looking at inside of China. Here we have more. A bearish research report on Chinese banks by Goldman Sachs has drawn rare rebuttals from a state-owned newspaper. In three parts, this particular thing here, Goldman argued that the lender's exposure to a prolonged property downturn and local government debt will lead to non-performing loan losses and shrinking profit margins, and thus threaten the ability to pay dividends. The country's biggest banks, with shares have held up well this year, sank after the publication. Well, of course, there is concern here. I hope you get what I'm saying. I think this is extremely important, front and center. The whole real estate market in China, $62 trillion. You've got these local government financing vehicles, that's $8.2 trillion. Doesn't mean all $8.2 trillion have to fail. It could be just a small portion, and for it to be a big crisis, they're already having big issues, big ones. But some out there are saying, hey, no worries. China's economic recovery is on track. Everything's great. until you look at the actual details. Part of China's problems are not in China, it's the world. China is the producer of the world, and they are trying to get their stuff out there, while the other countries are saying, nah, we don't really need it. And so that's an issue for China. China's real estate market roiled by default fears again as Country Garden spooks investors. I had brought up Country Garden previously, and here it is again. It's not done. It isn't. One of the largest non-state owned developers by sales has reportedly missed two, not just one, but two coupon payments on dollar bonds that were due on Sunday. There you go. So, of course, this is just part of it. They're not paying foreign. Okay, so the dollar ones, the foreigners, they're paying internally inside of China, but when it comes to outside, not happening. And so this is a concern. Obviously, if they continue to do this, you're defaulting. You're not paying back. You're not paying back your debts. That's a problem. You can cover it up. You can say, well, no, we're just not going to bring that in the media, or only it doesn't count because it's foreign. You could close down all these stocks, Evergrande stock, shut down. That doesn't resolve the problem. You are not bailing it out technically. You've basically just, put a timer in between when the now and that crisis eventually happening. They're not resolving it. So I don't understand how this is going to be fixed, but hey, here we go. All right. Supply and demand problem isn't unique to they mention a particular city, this area. It isn't even unique because in the province after province across China, evidence is pointing to the danger of a property bubble, and it's been easy to find. One reason for the rampant real estate speculation has been the lack of other options for investment. The boom in real estate drove house prices out of reach for ordinary families in many big cities. The government's response was to cap the number of flats any person could buy. And so, you know how that works. Obviously didn't resolve anything. And so here we are, okay? Big issues with real estate, $62 trillion. We got the 8.2 trillion that is 8.2 trillion being, within the local government financing vehicles. So think of what we saw with mortgage-backed securities, all these different things. It's like a derivative essentially of what we can see. Big issues, no question. Here we have Chinese ghost town of mansions being reclaimed by farmers. I thought it was interesting. They show you here, and they basically just use the land all around these mansions as they fall apart around them. They've got problems. Look, the next aspect is de-dollarization. De-dollarization is an issue as you look at both the long-term trends that we're seeing. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. There have been developments, but I'll show you that, as well as the setbacks. Setbacks are a problem within China and the other nations. They don't necessarily want that to happen, but here we go, and I'll show you. Bolivia challenges the global dollar dominance with the Chinese yuan and Russian ruble. So they want to use this. Developing countries want to use an alternative to the US dollar. We've made that clear. The US dollar, on the other hand, is Argentina. The US dollar soared almost 5,000% versus Argentina's peso over the last decade as the country faces debt and inflation crisis. That's fueling calls for the nation to dump the peso and adopt the greenback itself as its currency. And so it wouldn't be able to cut reliance from the US dollar is what they're saying. This is something interesting. They wouldn't be the only country to do that. A lot of countries actually use the US dollar as their own or use it in parallel. That's something there's no question about this. The whole world loves dollars. You can go anywhere and get those dollars, okay? So I think it's important right now that we look at all this information and realize that there's a lot going on, a lot of different points. If you want to know about all this stuff, hit that like button, because when you do, you are more likely to see these videos up in your recommended feed, and that is really key. Okay, I want you to subscribe to the channel here. Don't forget about that. 280,000 plus people here from all around the world. Fantastic community of people. How the global south is challenging US dollar dominance. The one that I wanted to mention, in addition to the BRICS, is Saudi Arabia potentially joining into the BRICS. We will see what happens. It may not be like a core member. They might have like a sort of an outer circle, and we're going to see that here in August. If you subscribe to the channel, each moment of this I'm going to be highlighting. This is going to be some of the biggest news of 2023. You got to know what's going on, because that may impact what's happening with China as well, beyond that. Geopolitically, let's talk about it real quick. This is important stuff. As you can look at it, Europe right now being stuck big time. They've got their issues for multiple reasons, but as it relates to China, we're going to talk about that, as well as US China. The back and forth has been unbelievable to see how long this has been going on. Number one thing here, Europe faces difficult decade against the US and China. And the one thing that they're mentioning in this is related to electric vehicles. Because why? Hey, if China's going to make these small vehicles, they like kind of the same type of vehicle, very small, compact, fuel efficient, and so on. Gas is extremely expensive in Europe, so fuel efficiency is important. And so they're going to provide them, hey, if they're going to do it at half the cost, people in Europe are going to buy that. That's a simple matter of fact, right? So that's the problem with Europe. But at the same time, Europe geopolitically has this problem between kind of not being too friendly to China, but not hating on China, because they need China. So it's a real terrible scenario for Europe. And then we have this: HSBC executive slams weak UK for backing US against China, saying, hey, you can't do this. You don't be like that, and so on. And then we have China imposing new export restrictions on gallium and germanium. This is part of this back and forth, this tit for tat that's going on between China and the US. There's a lot happening, and China actually has a lot to lose in this circumstance here, because they need the insatiable appetite for what China produces, but at the same time, they're playing this game, this back and forth. So big concerns all around. And of course, what you got to do. What can you do during this scenario? Are you just going to stand there and take it? Are you going to be a victim? Are you part of that? Well, in this community, we don't do that. We talk about what we can do to thrive, what we can do to not just survive, but actually prosper. And one of those things, having geographical diversification, because I think it's important people get it into their heads. When you have geographical diversification, this is something that most people don't. And so you're going to have assets in different places, or you're going to have income coming in from different places. And that's important. I talk about this in the Discord, which you are able to, and of course, all the time on my mentorship group. But if you want free stuff, that's available on the Discord. Absolutely. Link is in the description. And you got just basically having assets or businesses in different places where people are moving in. You don't want where there's demographics issues. You don't want to have a business that you're going to operate in a place where people are moving out. There's an aging population. Businesses are leaving. Like, that's not good. You got to be honest with yourself and realize what's happening. And that's how we position ourselves. There's a lot to it, but at least we're going to position ourselves for strength and growth. Now, I'm going to show you real quick right here. Comment of the day from Gene Vargas, 1903. It's devastating. Yes, that's right. It's devastating. I wanted to thank everybody for your comments. I love seeing them. And now I'm going to highlight them if I can in each video. I really love doing this. It's something that I have been doing since day one, replying to comments. So I want to highlight those in the video. Thank you for your comments. And of course, if you haven't already, join the Discord, which now the amount of people that are joining is unbelievable. We are well over 1,000 people in the Discord. This is a community built around not being victimized, not doing, what others will do and just simply try to scare you into things. This is about education. This is about learning, and I'm going to provide as much of that for free as possible. Check out the Discord and you will see what I'm talking about. Link is in the description. I'll see you there.